I was just having this conversation with someone. We were saying, you remember Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, it's so important because that's when traditionally retailers have actually started to turn a profit for the year. That's why it's called Black Friday. Now we're talking about Black Friday for other reasons, black not being a good thing. For the retailers in particular, in September, consumers only spent more money on filling up their gas tank and on health care. Everything else, pretty much, they spent less money on, pulling in their horns, putting their hands deeply in their pockets and not spending money. Why? Well, it might be because they're nervous about falling home prices, about the credit crisis, about the job. Their neighbors are losing their jobs. They're starting to feel the effects of this economic slowdown in their neighborhoods and in their communities. But it also might be because they don't have any more money they can put on their credit cards because credit card defaults are going up, and we know that credit issuers have been much more cautious. So it might be that they wanted to spend and they couldn't, or they are so nervous that they're not spending anymore. So you saw retail sales down 1.2% in September. Remember, this is before the stock market rout of last month, so a lot of people are expecting it to be bad again in October. And this is 3 months in a row down, and that hasn't happened in 15 years. It's the biggest drop in 2 or 3 years. So it just shows you in a number that we usually measure in 1/10, 2/10, 0.3% up or down is a 1.2% drop. And don't forget, too, that consumers for years have always been able to figure out a way to spend more every month. And we are used to consumer spending going up consistently over and over and over again. So where it did go up, gas prices, people were spending a lot more on gas. They couldn't buy clothes. They didn't buy furniture and the like.
Yeah, and I mean, they're shopping at Walmart, they're shopping at discounters, they're shopping even at thrift stores. They're seeing their business go up at thrift stores. So I found that very interesting.
It is interesting.
Let's talk about the new version of this banking bill, because I was fascinated to read, and I would encourage everyone, if they have a chance today, to look at this New York Times article that gives you the behind-the-scenes look at how this all went down. Apparently, the leaders of the nation's banks, and is it 9 of them, I think, that are now getting this investment, they were essentially kind of pushed into a room at the Treasury. Not pushed, but they were invited into a room at the Treasury, and Henry Paulson said, here's the one piece of paper. This is telling you what you're going to do, and you're going to sign this. We're going to buy a lot of your stocks, and by the time you leave this room, we're all going to agree to this. Go.
Henry Paulson is a persuasive individual, and anybody who's been in a room with him say that he's tall, he's commanding, he has a shaved head, he knows what he's talking about, he has millions and millions and millions of dollars of his own, he's amassed his own personal wealth, and anybody who's ever been in a meeting with him or been with him, they report that he uses his size and the way his personal presence in a room, and to be a fly on the wall, and that would have been just simply remarkable, right? He's someone who's worked around the clock as well over the past few weeks trying to get this done. One thing that I find pretty interesting are the reports that the Financial Services Roundtable, or the lobby firm, or the trade association for the financial services companies were concerned and opposed to any kind of CEO pay limitations and the like, saying it's not appropriate for the government to set some of these free market principles of what CEOs are paid and compensation packages and the like. And I think of the comeback that many are having in Congress. They're like, well, we don't think that we should be having to go in and recapitalize the banking system either, or to fix an industry because of some bad bets that some in the financial services industry made. So there's some really interesting discussions happening, I'm sure. And I want to bring in some comments, if I could, overnight. I'm sure you saw this San Francisco Fed president who used the R word. Well, the Fed is not declaring that there's a recession. That's something that after the fact the National Bureau of Economic Research does. It's a sort of a think tank of economists who dispassionately survey all of the data, and after the fact say, oh yes, there was a recession. It started this time and it ended this time. Well, we feel like we're in it now, or going into it. A lot of people say it's not controversial. Many economists have said that it's happening, might be even starting now in the third quarter, and that next year could be ugly for many. Well, Janet Yellen, the San Francisco Fed president, she said in a speech last night that it appears the U.S. is in recession, and to use the R word is significant for a Fed president. They're very careful about the words that they choose, but she also said it's not controversial. There are a lot of folks who are saying that the third quarter growth is looking weak, things are starting to look weak, and she said pretty much every part of the economy has been hit by this credit crisis. So that's sort of just, I guess, a snapshot of where we are. And
do you think that affects the markets, or how much of an effect does that have when you hear someone who does have a position of power within the economic system in our country acknowledge the elephant in the room?
I'm going to say I'm not sure exactly what the impact or how much, what percentage of this move in the market today is related to those comments. I will say that it doesn't change anything for the American consumers who already started pulling back, as we know, in September, who aren't buying cars, who aren't buying clothes. It's not going to help anybody get a job. It's not going to have anybody lose a job. I mean, there's some realities kind of on the ground, I think, that are well underway. And policymakers are starting to feel a little more comfortable admitting those. It's not talking down the economy to admit what people are feeling and talking about around the water cooler and with their families. And I made you a map that shows just sort of where states are struggling and where they aren't struggling. And I think it's interesting in light of tonight's debates. Green is good, to make it simple for television and the web, and red is not, and the kind of the white or the uncolored ones are pretty much average. But we took jobs, foreclosures, GDP, personal income, and some other things, and kind of pulled it all together. And you can see, we got battleground states like say Nevada, Florida, Ohio. Take a look at where you're seeing the most foreclosures, the most job losses, the biggest hit to personal income, and the slowest GDP growth, or even negative GDP growth contraction. And you can see how those situations, those suffering states, are many of them states that will be in play in the ballot box. So just more proof that issue number one is the economy in the voting booth. And, we'll see. People, depending on where you are, that picture pretty much is the gut check for people in this country about where they are and what they're feeling. Some places have been feeling it worse than most. Texas has a pretty great job market. I'm always surprised when the jobs reports come out. Places like Texas have a pretty great job market. Places like, Mississippi, Michigan, they don't. So depending on where you are and what you're doing, it's a very different kind of economy out there.
That's a very interesting map, and of course I'm sure the folks on both sides of the political aisle are looking at that and wondering what can we do in the next couple of weeks to use this to our advantage.
I'm sure that their maps in the big war rooms of those campaigns are even more detailed down to the counties. They're probably like John King's magic wall.
Yes.
I'm sure, with right down to
your
this
house.
Neighborhood. Right, this neighborhood, 15 people lost their house last month. I wouldn't be surprised, but that's what we're in. 2.5 million people, according to Realty Track, are going to fall into foreclosure proceedings this year. About half of them are going to lose their houses. That's remarkable, and we know that a lot more people are going to lose their jobs in the coming months. And when you just look at those retail sales numbers too, Reggie, anything related to the retail consumer, casinos, retailers, department stores, car dealerships, the people who make the parts for cars, all of these things are going to see job losses and already have.